Okay, well, let me start by sharing with you just a little bit about camp. We'll start with summer camp. And I'll just go ahead and put this out there since everybody wants to know the location first. This summer, we are planning to go to High Point Christian Camp in Pennsylvania. I got one shout out. That's where actually Dan and Miranda met, and that's where Daniel's from. High Point Christian Camp, it's near Reading, Pennsylvania. We have been to this camp multiple times now. We've been there twice under my ministry. I believe they went there once before I got here. And I'll explain a little bit more of the details behind that. But before I get into that, I kind of want to just share with you the value and the importance of camp and some of the philosophy behind why we do what we do when it comes to Christian camp. And so camp is one of the most, in my opinion, valuable experiences in a young person's life. I know several here, I've talked with them individually, and camp is not their thing. I know several of you have gone to camp multiple times every summer, and camp is the greatest thing in your life. And regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, as a whole, the idea or concept behind Christian camp is an incredible opportunity to impact and shape a young person's life. Because what it is really a unique week that a student gets to experience in a way that they don't get to experience really in any other form or fashion throughout the year. They have unique opportunities to be in a special location that has amazing facilities and activities specifically geared toward them that they get to experience really in no other location. They get the opportunity to be specifically zeroed in on and focused in on by a counselor who functions basically as a youth sponsor for the week, who is trained and specifically there to minister to your kid. They get the opportunity to sit under the Word of God preached with the intention focused directly on where they're at in life, and with distractions removed. And it really is a unique opportunity that is a wonderful experience. It's not a replacement for youth group or church or even family ministry with whether you're discipling your kids or doing family devotions or however that looks like in your home, but it's a wonderful resource to come alongside of that. And I know for myself, camp had a massive impact in my heart and life over the really 15 years I was able to be a part of it. My dad spoke at camps regularly growing up, and so I had the privilege to go with him. And even though I wasn't in camp, I was at camp starting when I was 3 years old, all the way up through my junior year of high school. I attended camp pretty much every summer that I was able to, and the Lord provided for that. I have memories of how God impacted and shaped my life through camp. As I was thinking about this, I remember one time I had the privilege to go to this small camp out in the desert of California that my dad was speaking at. Never heard of it, never been there before, never been back since. But I remember specific details from that camp that have impacted me, and actually, in some ways, some things that I've used in ministry here. Whether it was from the games or just the relationship. I don't remember my counselor's name, but I remember his nickname at camp was Lightning. There's several specific memories I have from that. I have memories from the wilds. I can remember most of my counselors there. I remember conversations I had with them on the camp porch. I went to Northland Camp, and I saw Jeremy Frazier walking. Where are you at, Jeremy? Jeremy probably has no memory of this, but I went to Pioneer Village when Jeremy was there. He was actually speaking that week. And and several things impacted me. The one that immediately comes to my mind was they did this free pizza giveaway for your cabin. And I don't remember how you got your name in the hat, but somehow my name got in that hat, and he pulled my name out. And I have a very specific memory of that. And I could go on and on and on this morning telling you how camp has impacted me, both from a fun way, but also spiritually. I remember as a sophomore in high school sitting under the preaching of Will Gulkin, and for the first time, God broke me, and it clicked for me what Jesus did on the cross for me. And I believe I was saved before that point, but it was for that time in high school that the light bulb kind of went on, and my relationship with God just opened up in a new way that I hadn't experienced before. And so I share that with you because I want you to see the importance and value that camp can offer your family and your student as well. And part of our philosophy here at Calvary has been to expose our students to as many different ministries as we can that fall under philosophically aligning with us. And so what that has looked like over the last 5 years since I've been here has been trying to do that to the best of our ability. And there's several good Christian camps that fall into that spectrum. We started by, we went to High Point one year, and then the next year was COVID. We were planning to go to the Wilds. That didn't work out. The following year, we were planning to go back to the Wilds, and with COVID stuff, it closed down before we could get in. So we went back to High Point. Then the previous 2 years, we have gone to the Wilds back to back. And so I would like to get back to trying to expose our students to different summer camp opportunities. And so through my research, I've tried to find some that would fit within the category of distance, as well as cost, as well as philosophical alignment. And unfortunately, that pool is very, very small. And with inflation and all that the economy and its rising prices, it has gotten even smaller in some degree. So really the option for us this summer is to go back to High Point. And so I want to give you some of the details that you'll need just as you consider camp for your child this summer. And these will be in the email coming out to you as well. But just want to kind of give them to you now so you can start planning, preparing, and praying about whether or not the Lord would have this option for your family this coming summer. So the first is this. It's the WHO, and it is for all of our CSM students currently. So any 6th through 12th graders, the week of camp that we're going is for all CSM students. The dates for it are July 1st through 6th. July 1st through 6th. The way that High Point structures their camps, they have middle school camp, they have high school camp, and then they have junior camp and teen camp. And so they kind of have different options, and just based off the calendar of when they're offering camp that fits our entire group, and when our church schedule, some of the events that we have planned, this is the week that lines up best with the church calendar. I know that falls over the 4th of July holiday, and for some that will be it'll be difficult for you to take part in that. But they do a pretty special 4th of July event there, and it's awesome. We went on the 4th of July week a couple years ago and had a wonderful time. And so that date again is July 1st through 6th. The speaker his name is Jason Malone. Some of you know Jason if you've grown up in the area. Jason is actually a pastor here in the Greenville area. He has served. He planted a church ministry called Summit Churches here in the Greenville area. There's several of them around. And then a few years ago, the Lord called Jason over to Fellowship Greenville to take a role there in starting an upstate coalition, which is a ministry where churches partner and do ministry together for the furtherance of the gospel across the upstate. And it's a really unique and wonderful ministry. Jason's a personal friend of mine. We've actually been to Jason's week here before, back in 2019, and I can still tell you some of the messages he preached. And that was the impact it had on my heart that week as a sponsor. And so I am excited to expose our students to his ministry again. The other thing that you, I'm sure, are wanting to know is cost. So let me walk you through that as well. High Point has a unique pricing structure, and they offer 3 price points, which is unique from any other camp I've ever heard of. They have a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and what that is not at all connected to the experience of the camper or the family. It's simply based off of the reality of what camp actually costs them per kid, and then making it available for kids to come. So tier 1 is like, hey, this is what the actual cost is for a kid to come here for a week. And I want to say it's like $450. Tier 3 is the cheapest option that they offer, which again has no effect on experience or anything. It's just they have donors who help make up that cost difference to provide for families to be able to go to camp. And that cost is, let me make sure I've got it down. Yep, $395 per camper. This is very comparable to the Wilds. It's actually $405 this year to go to the Wilds. If you do the early bird registration, it's a little bit cheaper because they have that, but it's pretty much identical to what it would cost to go there. And then on top of that, we will rent vans and we'll caravan up there with several sponsors. And so in order to help cover vans and gas, depending on how many people come, it'll probably be somewhere between $25 and $50 to help cover those rentals. So really what you're looking at for a week of camp is $450 if that is an option for your family to take part in this summer. Also, just want to put this out there as well. If going to camp is something that your family wants to take part in, but the financial aspect of it is makes it difficult for your family to be a part of it, I want you to hear from me that I don't want that to be the hindrance that keeps you from going to camp. I mentioned in my prayer, and I've been planning to mention this morning, we have had several opportunities, whether it's one of our weekend retreats, whether it's camp, whether it is ministry trips, where students have been in financial places where, apart from the Lord providing, they were not going to be able to go. And I can tell you that every single time the Lord has provided everything they need and more. And I've seen him do it for 5 years, and I'm confident he'll do it again. And so please don't let that be the reason why your student can't go. If that is, please come talk to me, because I have people in the church who have told me if that's ever the case, they would love to provide opportunities to help send our kids to be a part of these things. So all that to say, the camp option for this year is High Point Christian Camp up in Pennsylvania. Let me stop for a brief moment and just see if there's any questions. And if not, that's totally fine. I'm going to keep moving, but we'll have a time for questions at the end. But I just want to stop now and see if there's any questions off the bat I can answer. Yes?
How long is the road trip getting there?
Yeah, the road trip, I believe we did it last year, or the last time we did it, it was, I want to say with bathroom breaks, it took us 13 hours. We stopped overnight at a family's house up in Virginia that we have a relationship with, and stayed the night there and broke the trip up into 2 days, so it wasn't 13 straight hours in a van. And I think it's a little shorter than that. We hit some traffic on the way up there, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it was 13 hours is what we did. So.
Will you be stopping again this summer?
We'll cross that bridge probably as we get closer. I need to make sure the family is okay with it, but that would probably be the goal, would be to leave on a Sunday afternoon, drive halfway or a little more than halfway, stop, and then make the rest of the trip Monday morning before camp. So, yes?
What town is this in, and is the terrain a mountain terrain, or what does it look like around?
Yeah, that's a great question. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is in a little town called Birdsboro, Pennsylvania, right near Morgantown, and it's about 20 minutes outside of Reading. Is that correct? Ish. It is. Would you consider it mountainous?
It's a hill, but like
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, there's hills. It's a lot of. It's very similar to the wilds, I would say. Like it's out in the woods. And there's some hills, but the actual campsite itself is pretty flat. So, it's a good question. Any other? Yeah.
Are they like log cabins, or what are the facilities like?
Yeah. Let me back this up. Based off of 3 years ago when we went, it was a mixture of log cabins and then almost like dormitory type cabins. The girls were a little bit nicer than the guys, but hopefully they've updated those a little bit in the last 3 years. I'm not sure since I've been there, but yeah. They have a nice gym, they have a nice chapel that's all AC and covered, and then a nice dining hall as well, and several different activities, buildings. So, great questions. Yes? Yes, yep. Last time we were there, which was 2021, I want to say there were between 200 and 250 kids there, so probably 4 or 5 other youth groups, and then most of the youth groups are local. There was one of my friends actually is the student pastor at a church in Michigan. They made the trip down, so that was unique to see him. But most of them are local to the Philly and Pittsburgh area over there. So, yes. These are great. Yes?
How many other chaperones are going?
That will depend, at least one, if not 2, but it'll depend on how many kids go. So, for sure, at least another one. And I mean, I would love to take more, but it'll depend on kids. Yes? Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. The question was, if you have friends who don't go to this church that want to come, are they able to attend? Absolutely. We've taken kids from other youth groups in the past. We've taken friends, and it's wonderful. So, yeah, we'd love to have them. Good. All right, I'm going to move forward. If you do have questions, please keep them because I'll open it up here at the end. But I want to talk about our ministry trips now. For those of you who are new to CSM or have not had a student in high school yet, some of this may be new to you, others, you've heard this now for several years, but our philosophy and desire for our ministry trips is to offer at least 2 ministry trips to our students who are in high school during their 4 years with us. We've kind of built this structure to have a first-year trip and a second-year trip. And the idea behind that is that our first-year trip is offered every year. It is more of a basic trip. It is, historically, it's been to a small church in Hamtramck, Michigan, which is right outside of Detroit. It's a predominantly Muslim community with a small gospel preaching church there that we've partnered with for the last couple years, and it's been an amazing ministry and an amazing experience for our kids. And part of that is the ability to take more kids is an option there, and so it's easy to take a trip there every year. It's also very affordable, which I'll explain in a little bit, but that's kind of been our goal for our first year trip, and then our second year trip is offered every year, or every other year, I'm sorry, and so typically that is more of what your foreign ministry trip, kind of bigger trip, more intense trip is. And so the goal is kids go on the first year trip and experience what it's like to go on a trip with us, what our heartbeat is behind the trip, and I can explain that a little bit more as well, and then prepare them to send them off into the second year trip. And so that's kind of been our goal. Our first year trip this year, though, is going to have to look a little bit different, and so let me explain that. This year, or this past week, I called my buddy, my contact up in Detroit. His name is Sam Hoon, to kind of talk through all and finalize our details. I had dates for him, and so when I called him, he let me know that the Lord has been working in his life and their church's life, and he's actually moving on from their church to take a lead pastor position at a church 3 hours north in a little city called Oscoda, Michigan. Anybody from Michigan, if I butchered that, I'm sorry. It's a weird name, and but it's a very small town, kind of on the northeast, up on Lake Huron, and so he let me know on Friday that this is the direction the Lord's leading them, and so they're not going to be with Grace next summer. And so you may be wondering, well, why not just take your trip to Grace anyways? And that's a great question. Let me kind of explain why it's a little more difficult now. Sam, this church is a very small church. There's only about 50 people there. Sam is the only full-time pastor there. The other two, Jay and Jason, are wonderful men. I have great relationship and friendship with them, but they both work full-time jobs. And so when we are there, Sam has been our primary point of contact. We get to spend time with Jay and Jason, but it's around their work schedule and what allows for that. And so Sam has been the guy we've spent the majority of time with. He's been the guy that has taken us around, that has created ministry opportunities, and who spends a significant amount of time teaching us. And so with him moving on, I'm not sure, and Grace isn't sure, that the experience definitely wouldn't be the same, and I'm not sure that it's really a viable option, at least for this summer, with they're going to be having to replace Sam and trying to figure out what ministry is going to look like for them now. So with that, that is causing me to have to rethink our first year ministry trip. And the good news is I have hopefully several options already in the 3 days that I've been thinking about this that are legitimate, real options. And so I kind of want to give you some info on that and ask you to pray with me as I'm prayerfully considering an option for our group this summer. Like I said, my goal and my prayer is, first of all, to have this trip this summer. I am committed to creating at least some form of experience for our first year trip. I think our ministry trips, right up there with camp, are one of the most valuable experiences a student can have. And so having this first year trip is vitally important because I think for our youth group, it sets the foundation for kind of the culture that I want our students to embrace, not only as they think about missions and ministry trips. And part of our goal at CSM is to come alongside you all and train your students about what life in the church looks like. So these ministry trips are more than just going away for a week or giving them a specific experience or taking the kids off your hands for a week. These trips I'm actually trying to train your students to value gospel missions and to think outside of their life here in the Greenville area, to the fact that there is a whole world out there that needs the gospel. And God could be calling them to spend their life for Jesus in this way. And I want to challenge you as parents to consider that as well, because I know some of you have probably envisioned what life for your child is going to look like. You see certain talents in your kid or certain affinities to particular areas and giftings. And those are wonderful, and you should continue to push your kids towards those things. But I want to challenge you as well to hold your kids loosely. That God could be calling your kid to go a completely different direction than you ever thought or planned. And if God does that, and it means they have to walk away from certain opportunities that may be available to them, like following God's calling on their life is more important than taking advantage of whatever the world's offering to them. And I know that's not probably what you want to hear this morning, but I want you to hear that from me, because I'm going to be honest with you, that's what I'm telling your kids when they come to ministry trip training, is that my goal for them is that they would catch a heart for the gospel, that it would be they would become so passionate about what Jesus offers them and has done for them, that they would spend their life valuing that more than whatever other opportunities come along the way. And my hope and my prayer is that one day CSM is going to be this feeder system into the world where the gospel is going out and Jesus is being proclaimed and lost people are coming to know Christ all across the United States, all across the globe, because our students were exposed to the gospel and they were encouraged to value that above everything else. And so that's really the heartbeat behind our ministry trips. That's why we go to Detroit every year. It's not because it's glamorous or fun or because I love sleeping on a cot in a basement in Michigan. It's awful. I'm just going to be honest with you. And sharing one bathroom with 8 other guys is even worse. But it's so valuable to expose our kids to that. And so that's my heartbeat and my prayer and my challenge to you. And so as I've been thinking about this over the last 3 days, I've already have some legitimate options for our first year trip laid out. The first being, I know of an option in Minnesota at a inner city church there, where it's close to where I grew up. I've been to that church before. I've done ministry at that church before. And it would be very, very similar to our experiences in Detroit. And so that is a legitimate option. I know of another option in Atlanta that is quite different than what we've done, but still would be a great experience and somewhat close to home. It would be different than what we've done, but we would still be able to connect it to our philosophy. I know of, I've started some work a couple years ago on a possible trip to Florida with a ministry that I served with and interned at when I was in college, and have great relationships with there that I plan to check back into as well. And then the best case scenario would be to go back to Michigan and connect with Sam and his new church. He was explaining to me some opportunities already there. He's not sure if this summer is the right summer for him, just with his transition. But we could spend time with him, and then we could spend time with Grace in a much more condensed manner. And then we could also go back to the church, another church that we've helped with and partnered there called Resurrection Church, about 20 minutes away. And so it'd kind of be the best of all worlds if we could do that. But those are the options I am considering. If you know of others that are stateside and could potentially be viable options, I would love for you to share those with me. And my goal for these trips is to keep it at $500 or less out of pocket for our families. I know, to my knowledge, no student has ever paid more than $400 for a first-year trip. The cost of a first-year trip is $900. That's typically, historically, what we've paid, and we've been able to raise the difference there. And most kids pay between $200 and $400 based off of our fundraising. So that's the goal, would be no more than $500 out of your pocket, everything else raised, and that's would be very reasonable with transportation, housing, food, and the ministry. The target dates for this, if you want to write it down, obviously these are very subject to whatever ends up happening, but the target date is June 4th through 10th. June 4th through 10th. Most schools, including Greenville County Schools, are now done in May, which is wonderful, and it frees us up to do more ministry earlier in the summer. So June 4th through 10th is the target goal. Let me stop and ask if there's any questions about anything I've shared with that or camp so far. Yes?
Is that for the high school only?
Yes. Ministry trips we set those aside for high school, just with it being an extended period of time away, overnight, usually staying in not as structured circumstances as like a camp, and so we set that aside for high school.
And that is people that are already in ninth grade this year?
So it'll start with anybody who's currently 9th through 12th grade this year, and then we'll open it up if there's extra spots for any rising 9th graders as well. Yep. Good question. Yes?
Are these more like work camps, or are they more discipleship camps?
So I would put I label them more as observation and discipleship. So our goal is to go to a gospel partner or a church we've partnered with and observe the ministry there and come alongside and serve in whatever way that we can. So at Grace, what that looked like on a daily basis was every morning we'd get up, and Sam was very passionate about discipleship. So from basically 9 to noon every morning, he would run basically mini seminars on different discipleship topics. And because it was predominantly Islamic, they were geared towards how Christians should engage with and share the gospel with Muslims. And understanding what Islam teaches, understanding what Christianity teaches, what the differences are, how you can interact with them. So it was wonderful. And then in the afternoon, we would join in whatever ministry that church offered. So at night, most nights, we would go to the local park, because that's where their church would go to the local park and play games, do crafts. The boys and girls have to be separated due to the nature of Islam. And so guys would play with guys, girls would play with girls, and the parents and church members would try to engage the adults. Wow. And so we would join in and minister there. Or we would, this other church, Resurrection, had a need for us to canvass. They were promoting a dodgeball tournament for teenagers. So we went to local public schools at the end of school and canvassed and handed out invitations to that and kind of prepped them for that and stuff. So we don't go and create ministry, we go and join in whatever ministry they're doing and let them kind of speak into how we can best serve them and help them. Yes?
In previous years, about how many would you send on the first year trips?
First year trips, we typically have between 14 and 16 students go on that. It gets a little more difficult after that number just with transportation and housing. I took it, my first ever trip, we took 37. I was 2 weeks married. It was a disaster. Was there anybody on that trip that's still in youth group? Yeah, Stephen Terra. Stephen, it was a disaster, wasn't it? Yeah, so the Lord, that was like trial by fire, and I'm so thankful Calvary didn't fire me after that. So I learned my lesson to bring it down. And so first year trips are typically between 14 and 16. And then depending on the location for second year trips, determines the number as well. So I'll speak more to that here in a moment with the second year trip. Great questions. Anything else? If not, I'm going to keep moving. We'll have another question time. So let me talk about the second year trip. Unlock my iPad again. So I know everybody wants to know the location, so I'll go ahead and throw that out there as well. Our second year trip this year is going to northeast Spain. Northeast Spain. We are going to a little city there called Zagama, Spain. It is near Bilbao, I can't speak Spanish, so I don't, is that right? Bilbao? Bilbao, Spain, okay. And it's in the Basque region near the French border, okay. So our gospel partners there were just here recently. It is Andy and Mimi Bonikowski. They have been there for 35 years, I believe, 30 plus years for sure. And part of my goals are to expose our students to gospel partners. We have taken two foreign trips during my time here. We've gone to the Dominican both times because we were connected with gospel partners there. It's a wonderful ministry. We had a wonderful time down there, and still we love the ministry down there. But our gospel partners who were there have transitioned into a different role, and they're not there anymore. And so part of my goal is to expose our kids to our gospel partners and connect the partnership with the local church. And that goes back to what I was saying. We're trying to train our students not to just think about the present, but also to develop partnerships so that as they grow up and if the Lord allows them to stay here or if he calls them somewhere else, they have gospel partnerships with people who are doing gospel ministry. And again, my prayer is one day several of our students, God will take them and place them in different gospel ministry contexts. And so I want to expose them to our gospel partners. So let me give you some details about this trip. The dates for this trip are July 15th through 24th. July 15th through 24th. Just so you are aware, we would leave on Monday the 15th. It takes about a day of travel to get there. And so between that and the jet lag, we probably would not start ministering until Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, the 17th. And so we'd be there for a week. I'm trying to give your students a full week of ministry there. And then we would leave Tuesday, July 23rd. It takes about a day of travel to get back. So that's why those dates look so long. So those are the dates, the 15th through the 24th. The projected cost for the trip, as best we can tell, is $1,700. That includes their airfare, that includes their housing, their meals, transportation, and that may fluctuate a little bit based off of flights that we're able to get, and based off of, the flights may go down. Part of the dates, reason for those dates is picking days where flight costs are lowest. Also, just several other things may determine that. So our goal would be that no student would have to pay more than $1,000 out of pocket for that trip. And obviously we are going to fundraise as best we can. Part of why I wanted to have this meeting today is to give us 6 months of fundraising opportunities, 6 months of students being able to save, 6 months of students being able to do odd jobs and put aside money to put towards this trip. And then also wanted to do it before Christmas so that parents, if you wanted to use this as a Christmas gift opportunity or ask grandparents and whatever, I just want to put this before you. And so that is July 15th through 24th. I have not finalized the full number of students yet because I'm waiting to get how the cost would be affected if I can bring more students. with transportation. And they have had groups there of 50 people, so it's not a housing issue, it's just more transportation. And I want to make sure we can pay one of their church members to drive us if we do if we have to get another van, so that we have a local there.